So now we're going to dive into resumes and cover letters. So first, I have a question for all of you. What is the purpose of a resume? Why do we have to write one? It takes so long to update and we're like changing our margins and making sure the bullets all line up, right? Um, we know working on your resume takes a lot of time. What's the purpose? What's the purpose of a resume? And you're welcome to unmute yourself and share or put it in the chat. But why do we have to have one? Why do we need one? What do we create it for? Any thoughts? Anyone want to take a stab and unmute themselves?
I'll take a stab.
Yeah, go for it.
To highlight our accomplishments, skills, and really give some conversation starters for our interviewers.
Awesome. Yeah, those are absolutely key as a perfect answer, Fabian. And yeah, ultimately that's exactly what your resume is doing. It's allowing that hiring manager or interviewer to get a glimpse of what have you done in your career so far? What have you accomplished? What type of work have you been doing? And it gives them, kind of a brief glimpse of who you are before they get to have that interview and learn more about you and your background. And ultimately, right, the purpose of your resume and the reason that we have to have one and create one is to get you that interview, is to get you that phone screen. That, and in the long term, of course, like I remember when someone asked me this when I was in college and I was like, well, to get a job. And they were like, well, really, it's to get the interview. And so think about it in short frame, like the goal and the reason you have that resume is to get that phone screen, to get that first round interview that can eventually land you the job. Okay. So I stole this from my colleague who is a huge Marvel fan. So that's why this is here. But I thought it was a great comparison and kind of breakdown of resumes and cover letters. So your resume, right? Thinking about IMDb for those who have been on that website, right? You're looking up Denzel Washington and you have his full film and acting history, every movie, every show he's been in. And then the cover letter, it might be the trailer for, Remember the Titans or Training Day and a specific role he played or movie he was in, right? So thinking about that, both the movie trailer and your cover letter, as well as your resume, kind of that complete work history, everything you've done, that IMDb page, are your self-marketing tools that allow you to promote you as this fantastic feature film and provide different insights to different audiences, right? So Denzel played a much different character in Remember the Titans than he did in Training Day and things like that. So how are you able to tailor what's on your resume to show someone for a specific role that you're applying for or interviewing for, that experience on there matches up with what the job description is asking? Especially, and I say that especially for those of you who I always, use myself as the example. There's multiple industries that I'm interested in the work that is done there. And so I might be applying for, a certain type of role that's similar in marketing, but then also in nonprofit. So how do I tailor what's on my resume so that the nonprofit audience, it feels like it's for them versus the marketing audience? So just a few kind of resume conventions to follow. And once again, you'll have this slide deck so you can, once again, it's just kind of a picture of the resume, but I know it's a little bit like blurry and you can't see too up close. But I will send it, and we'll send our job search starter kit so you have access to a few kind of resume examples in case those of you want to maybe refine your formatting or take a look at some examples. So your resume, for the most part, unless you really have, and I know once again, there's a range of you in here of more experienced alumni who have been out in your career for a little bit of time. I would say for those of you, like you may have extensive career experience and your resume may be, 1 to 2 pages, but other than that, your resume, especially when you're tailoring it, should be 1 page, single-sided, saved in PDF format. That way, when they open it up, formatting doesn't get messed up and things like that. You do want to minimize color, black is preferable, and keep your font sizes and styles consistent throughout the document. I will highlight here, of course, once again, as I said, there are so many different nuances and everyone has different opinions on resumes. And obviously, for those of you who may be in here in marketing and graphic design, that doesn't apply as much to you because I know that your resume is especially that marketing tool and you have to show your talented design skills in your resume. So I know once again, some of you might, fall outside that line, but typically you want to have kind of the plain black and white formatting. And there really is, a bit of strategy. And I know many times people are like, oh, it looks so boring. It looks like everyone else's. I know, I totally get it. Um, but there is some strategy involved with resumes, and that you really want your resume to pass that initial eye screen test and have it be clean, easy to read when the recruiter is looking through, maybe 170 different resumes that they're seeing for a role that they're maybe going to interview 20 people. And so you want it to have that clean formatting, look easy to read. They can see dates of different things, and everything looks consistent. So, and there is that eye test, and that's why, for the most part, that's the formatting that we recommend you follow. But in the end, the resume, and your resume is your inventory of experiences. So you also need to be confident in it. So everything I'm saying here, once again, some guidance and suggestions, but ultimately your resume is yours, and that document you should make your own in terms of how you'd like to structure it and format it. And then, like I said earlier, and kind of talking about thinking about the movie trailer versus the IMDb, you really want to create a tailored resume. And so I highly recommend, for those of you that don't already have this, to have a master resume. And so that document is saved with all of your work history, all the different things you've been involved in, any work experience, any internships, any research projects, whatever you did even during your time at UCLA. So it kind of is that long running master list of all the work you've done, volunteer experience, everything is on that master resume. That's saved somewhere special. And then what you'll do is you'll create a tailored resume for the specific job you're applying for. So let's say it is, marketing coordinator or communications manager. So then you would go to your master resume and pull off the experiences that are most relevant from what you've done, and the skills that are most connected to what that job is asking for, to create that tailored resume that's for the marketing role or communications role or social media management, something like that. And then you could even have, as your section header, relevant experience, and it would be that focused experience that's in whatever realm you're applying to. So once again, if you don't have the master resume, highly recommend kind of have that running list and then start to pull stuff off so you can create those tailored resumes and have your marketing resume or your event planning resume or whatever it may be that you're looking for. You obviously, in the top of your resume, you want to have your full name at the top, accompanied by your contact information. Your name should be the biggest font size on your resume, hands down. And then after that, your contact information, so phone, email, and potentially like your LinkedIn URL, that should be the second biggest font size after your name. And the reason for that is you want that interviewer or recruiter to be as easy as possible for them to look and see your name, email, and phone. And that way they can shoot you an email for an interview, call you up and ask for a phone screen, something like that. So after your name, second biggest font size, your contact information. And then I would recommend, I'm sure some of you have seen this by now, you no longer need to have your mailing address at the top of your resume. That has become more outdated. And also I think it's become a safety thing for a lot of people. And I would absolutely agree with that. I don't think that you need to have that, passing that along to strangers potentially. So some people will just add their city and state. And if that's something that you'd like to do, you're welcome to. But I have seen more and more lately nowadays, this kind of formatting that Josie Bruin has, which is just name, cell phone, email, and LinkedIn. So think about that as well. And then for our students that are here, and especially recent graduates, your education should be at the top of your resume. However, I would say for our more experienced alumni and professionals who've been working for a while, I do think it's worth having your education at the bottom. And once again, your UCLA education will be first, and you could have, if you transfer student or anything like that, you could have your community college after that. But I would highlight your professional experience first for those that are more experienced and have more work experience than, for example, current students or recent graduates. And you want to list your graduation as month and year. I do sometimes see often where folks will have their full, like May 26th or September 2016 to June 2020. They'll have the dates that they went to UCLA. You want to have your graduation month and year. So like June 2020. So another thing that I want to highlight for your consideration on the resume, and I've seen this, I've definitely seen an increasing trend in this section on your resume, is the professional summary or professional profile section. And so this would be at the top, right after, for example, for Josie Bruin, it would come right after her Josie Bruin contact information and before education, if she was a recent graduate. And so the professional profile or summary section is really just a brief snapshot, almost going back to what Fabian said, right? You want that person to be able to quickly see a summary of, what are your accomplishments? What are some key things you've done in your career so far? What skills do you bring and how will you add value to the organization? So it kind of allows you to take the job description and create a focused profile that allows them to quickly pick up your resume and see like, oh, 5 years event planning experience or whatever it may be. So I'll show you two examples of what that might look like. And the nice thing is you can customize these for each position based on what that company is looking for, what that job description is asking for. So like I said, you could have kind of that, marketing profile or event planning, depending on the types of roles you're applying for. So here's just one sample profile of what that might look like. This is obviously someone who is applying for event planning roles. So they have their event planning profile with, over 4 years of client service experience. And so this is one style that I'd say, once again, having, I'd say 3 to 4 quick bullet statements about your key accomplishments and what you've, the skills that you've gained so far throughout your career. You can highlight those through this profile section. And then one other profile, and this, once again, they've decided to opt for not bullets, but full kind of just a written out short paragraph. This is a fashion production professional. And as you can see, just a few kind of sentences about some key highlights of what their skills that they have, the experience that they have, and, being able to design elements fit customer budget, work under pressure, meeting deadlines, things like that. So I recommend this especially for our more experienced alumni and alumni that are either maybe changing careers or job searching at the moment or thinking about what's next for them. The profile section is a really nice snapshot. And like I said, I have seen and a growing trend in people putting this at the top of their resume before they have their experience section and list their kind of work history. So it's something to think about. And then kind of going a little more in depth on the resumes. Obviously, your section headers are going to vary based on the experiences you have. However, I want to highlight my note there, which is you all, no matter where you're at in your career, from our current students to recent graduates and more experienced alumni and professionals, you all have very valuable experiences to offer any employer. And it's just a matter of how you are articulating that through your resume and how you're using your bullet statements to show them what you've accomplished and making sure that you're highlighting the keywords in the job description through the skills and the language that you're using on your resume. So some section headers to consider, of course, you can have professional experience, you can have relevant experience. The relevant experience one I always recommend if you are working on that more tailored resume for, let's say a marketing position, or let's say a nonprofit program coordinator role, something like that. So relevant experience, and then you would just take, once again, that work from your master resume and have that highlighted, as 3 to 4 things in that section. Also another, other section headers, leadership and involvement, leadership and service. So for those that are involved in, different volunteer organizations, nonprofits, professional associations, if you sit on committees and boards of different, maybe some identity-based groups in Los Angeles, or depending on where you are. And then also you can have, projects and additional skills is another option of a section you could have there. And then your experiences should also be listed in reverse chronological order. So whatever your current job is, of course, will come first. And that would be, you'd have the start date to present if you're currently working there. And then from there, you'd go back through kind of your work history, and it would go reverse chronological to, dating back to kind of your earliest job. And then once again, your resume is a snapshot, but it's also telling a story about, the projects you've worked on, your accomplishments, and your key highlights that allow that employer to see, oh, these are the skills and experience this person will bring to this role. And this is the knowledge they already have from this work that they've done. Strong resumes are outcome and results oriented, and that's why your bullet statements are super important, that you're starting those with an action verb. All your bullets are started with an action verb, and whenever you can, being able to incorporate numeric accomplishments or kind of, quantitative accomplishment in there. So for example, if you're able to do a quick calculation and see that, you facilitated these trainings and it increased participation by, 10% or 15%, that is a key highlight you can have in that bullet statement. So whenever you can, I know it's not always possible, especially for those that sometimes aren't in more of those data or like number kind of never focused roles. But whenever you can, if you can highlight some different metrics of what your work has accomplished or how it has increased something and made that organization better, definitely do that through your bullet statements. And for every experience point, you really just want to think about, what did you do and why is that important, or why did that add value there? I always, when I'm working and advising, either current students or alumni more in the kind of career coaching, career advising realm, I always say, if you're thinking about your experience on your resume and a past experience, past job you've had, think about it in the frame of, if you were to tell someone, what are 3 things you took away from that role, or 3 highlights that you gained, what 3 skills you gained? If you can think about it that way, then write your bullet statements kind of with that mentality of being able to show them, here are the key things that I now, as a result of this position, am a better professional because I gained experience in X, Y, and Z, or I gained skills in A, B, and C. So just some things to think about. And then a few last resume tips. You don't need to have a full extensive list of your hobbies or any too personal details. Photos should not be on your resume. You want to make sure you eliminate bias wherever you can. I highly discourage using a template, especially through Word. I know it's encouraging, and I know for some that like starting out, Word makes it really easy. They're like, here's our resume templates. What many of you have probably found over time, as I did myself in college, is those templates are not very user-friendly, because the moment you try to start changing everything, your formatting goes crazy. So I discourage you from using a template. Once again, we will provide some resume starter documents, fresh, kind of in a nice clean Word document that you're welcome to use for some formatting guidelines. And there's not any of those crazy text boxes that the moment you space something, everything, it goes haywire. So other things, you do not need to include references on your resume. That, once again, is a more outdated practice, or you don't even need to include the line references available upon request. Once, if you're moving along in the job process, have that reference list ready. That way, when someone asks you for it, then you can share that, but you do not need to have your references on your resume. And then once again, I can't stress enough, you want to stay consistent with your formatting. So making sure that font sizes, if you have a different font size for your section headers, making sure that matches across the board, as well as the same font, if you're bolding your position title and italicizing your company, making sure that matches for each thing, as well as checking out, make sure your dates all line up. And then, like I said, one page tailored, really, unless you have extensive experience. And I know there's a mix here of you that, are further along in your career. So I totally get, if you have a 2-page resume and you've gone to graduate school and things like that, totally understandable and makes sense. And then this, I can't stress this one enough. Proofread, edit, double check, print it out, take a look at it, have your roommate, have friend, partner, take a look at it, because especially when we're working on our own document for so long, we will miss those little things. And I promise, if you show it to partner, roommate, friend, coworker or something like that, they may catch, oh, that's the wrong there, or something like that. So proofread, edit, double check, because I can't tell you the number of stories I've heard from recruiters or hiring managers that there was a typo or an error and that person was tossed to the no pile. So you don't want that to be the reason that you're not getting that first round interview. Any initial questions on resumes? I know I'm going to dive into briefly cover letters, but I think we're doing okay on time. So if anyone has a question, I know I ran through a lot in a short amount of time. Is there any initial resume questions that stand out for you? I'd be happy to answer 1 or 2 right now.
I'll be brave and go first, Katie. This is
fabulous. Okay, great.
Sometimes when I am working with folks who are, newer to graduating, they are under the impression that they want to separate their work that they've been paid for and volunteer work. And I've always kind of advised them against that, because I think you gain experience regardless of whether you are paid or not. But I was really curious if you had feedback on that.
Yeah. Can you ask that one more time? Were you asking, sorry, I was trying to see if I could get this out of presenter view, I think.
No worries.
Ask it one more time.
So sometimes I find that folks who are, more recently graduated, they'll feel the need to separate their what they would call like their professional experience from their volunteer experience, because one is paid and one is unpaid.
Yeah. Okay.
And to steer them away from that if possible, but I was curious what you think about that.
Yes, no, that's a great question. So I would say that I always encourage folks to your your experience, paid or unpaid, is like extremely valuable. And honestly, I mean, I can tell you from experience, some of the most valuable work experience I had in terms of just figuring out what I was wanted to do with my life was actually unpaid and volunteer work that I did. And so just because a role that you've had is maybe a volunteer role, or you're with a, you're on a board or a nonprofit, or you're in an organization or association, that experience is just as valuable as, let's say, a paid internship or your, first full-time role or entry-level job. So I absolutely encourage folks that if that volunteer role you had is relevant to, and you have skills that connect to that job, absolutely put it in your professional experience, work experience. I do not think that you should discount it and put it in like the volunteer section if it is something that was really impactful in preparing you for that job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So cover letter. So once again, going back to kind of the movie reference, right? Your cover letter is that tailored trailer, so to speak, of highlighting you for a specific role based on pulling out the key experience from your resume that aligns with that job description. You are literally writing that cover letter. If you happen to have, if you're lucky enough to have, 2 screens or anything like that, you could have that job description up one screen and you have your cover letter, you're writing in Word on the other screen. So you're able to directly compare what that job description is asking for, and looking at those keywords, making sure they're incorporated throughout your cover letter. So cover letter should be absolutely no longer than 1 page, single-sided, and once again, saved in PDF format so that you're not having to worry about any formatting changes things getting messed up when someone opens it. I would say 3 to 4 paragraphs is an appropriate length. And once again, those don't need to be super long paragraphs, but 3 to 4 paragraphs is plenty. You're also going to, once again, minimize your color and kind of keep it in that traditional black and white format, and keep your font sizes and styles consistent with your resume. The one thing I do want to highlight here, because I see it a lot in terms of something that I think is a misstep for a lot of individuals that I've worked with previously on their job application materials. You want to make sure, and especially those that might be, you might have a cover letter from a Word template, your resume header and your cover letter header should match. So for example, obviously we know here Rachel Adams is a different candidate than Josie Bruin. But if I was Josie Bruin and I was working on my cover letter and I went back here to show you her, I would want to make sure that up there at the top where I have her name and contact information, that's exactly how it is at the top of my cover letter, because you need to make sure that your application materials match. So just wanted to highlight there. I see it all the time. Sometimes it's just because people, grab a cover letter template off the internet or Word, and it lets them put their information in differently, but you want to make sure those match. So just literally copy and paste, drop your resume header at the top of that Word document, and then you can go forth with your cover letter. So your cover letters are used to really confirm the assumptions and the experience that's on your resume. So what you want to do is the cover letter, by no means, you don't need to be super long-winded. You want to be concise. You don't have to cover everything. You want to take, 2 to 4, I would say, kind of key work experience highlights or accomplishments that are directly connected to the work that the job description is asking this person to do. And you want to highlight those in your cover letter. So being able to, say in that middle paragraph, if let's say I always operate in a 3-paragraph format for cover letters. That first is your intro, where you're saying, dear hiring manager. That's always what I recommend. If you don't have the name of the hiring manager, you could say dear hiring manager or dear hiring committee as your kind of greeting. And then that first paragraph is really the most important, because it's going to show the employer that you've thought about why you're applying for this role, specifically at this company. And you're sharing that in that first paragraph. You're saying, this is the role I'm applying for. I'm interested in, applying for this role at Netflix because I know that Netflix, is passionate about creating, original and, unique content to meet different audience, whatever. And obviously I'm, just saying off the top of my head, coming up with examples, but you want to highlight in that first paragraph, why that company, what about them, especially knowing that they have, for example, right? Netflix has so many competitors now. Why Netflix specifically? So why them? And then why that role, right? If it's a marketing coordinator role, you could be a marketing coordinator at Hulu, at Disney, whatever. And you could also be a marketing coordinator within a totally different industry than, let's say, entertainment and media is of course, the example I'm using now. But why that company? Why that role? That's what you want to answer in that first paragraph. And then that middle paragraph, that's where you're able to really drill down and say, from my past experience, here's what I've done, and here's the marketing skills I've gained. Here's an accomplishment I had with this marketing project or this pitch and this campaign I ran. And you're going to highlight a few, like I said, just a few sentences in that middle paragraph of here's the skills I have, here's the direct experience that's showing you I'm prepared and I'm qualified for this position. And then your last paragraph is really just, wrapping up, kind of a brief wrap up, maybe restating a few of your key skills, saying, thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. And then you can have kind of that sincerely or best regards. I actually think I should have skipped this as I was just talking, but once again, those same things I was just mentioning about the header, your salutation of how you're greeting them, dear hiring manager. That's also something I do want to point out. Sometimes if you think you might know who the person is you can write to for the position, you might know the hiring manager. Keep in mind that websites are not always updated very often. I've experienced that myself. So they're not always accurate. So when in doubt, use the dear hiring manager or dear hiring committee. And then, like I said, 2 to 3 kind of key points from that job description, match it up and highlight that in that middle paragraph. So in your cover letter, that middle paragraph will be your longest for sure. And then sincerely or best regards is, I would say, a recommended sign off for closing out your letter. Okay, great. We do have time for questions. So I'll stop sharing now and I will open it up to cover letter, resume questions, other things that have come up throughout this conversation.
I had something I wanted to share. Can you hear me?
Yes, Christina. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Go for it.
I like the summary that I keep reminding students I work with that your resume and your cover letter tell your story. Yeah. And that is what I come back to when I'm evaluating my own or other people's, to say, well, what are you applying for? And how can you shape what you're submitting to best fit what you're applying for? And that's where it can be really an interesting subjective experience of how you do articulate, like, well, this is the kind of person I am. Am I creating a separate volunteer category, or am I blending my volunteer and work experience? That came up.
Right.
And even I wanted to ask, that idea of adding that profile to your resume felt like something I would that is represented by a cover letter. Like, is that what you would say as well? I feel like I wouldn't include that because my cover letter already says a summary of who I am and why they should consider me. Yeah. I don't know what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, I would say it depends. I mean, I think the profile section on the resume, the one I was talking about where you might have the event planning profile with like 3 to 4 bullets. I think I've especially seen it for a lot of folks that are changing job functions or changing industries. So it's used a lot for kind of those career changers or pivots, because obviously it's like if they're looking at their experience and it's all in marketing and they're moving over to, let's say, event planning or PR or something, that person might see the resume and be like, well, you don't have the PR experience you're looking for. You don't have the event planning. But if you can provide the profile where you're able to pull out things you've done, and maybe it's not even in your formal roles, but it's outside stuff you've done outside of your kind of 9 to 5 that given you that event planning experience or PR or advertising, whatever it may be, that profile you can kind of use as this quick snapshot to say, I know my resume you may not initially off first glance think that I'm qualified for this, but I am, and here's kind of that snapshot. So once again, I've noticed the profile used, I think, for people that have more experience in their career and are able to kind of give, over 10 years of experience in media planning, or so it's just something you could consider, but you definitely, if you have a strong cover letter, the profile is absolutely optional. Any other questions that you might have.
Hey, Katie, it's
Hi.
Shannon again.
Hi, Shannon.
Is it possible for me to adjust margins? Is that going to impact anything, like to stretch maybe more information into my cover letter? Can I change the margins?
Yeah, good question. So you definitely can change the margins. I would recommend, especially if you're in Word, thinking about sticking to the ones that are like, I think it's like, if you click in the margins, it's like moderate, and then there's like narrow. I would say you definitely want to leave a little bit of white space around the edges. So I have seen, and I've been an interviewer and kind of the person who's done screenings for a number of different roles now in my career. And I will definitely tell you that I'm probably not the only one that would say this or alone in that. Sometimes those that are all the way stretched to the page can look really like overwhelming at first glance. So I would say you do want to keep a decent amount, fair amount of white space, but you can absolutely stretch it to kind of, pull your bullets out a little longer, but just keep a little bit of the white space for sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Actually,
Katie, can you talk a
sorry.
Oh, sorry,
No,
Fabian.
go ahead.
I had a quick question about the skills section, and
Yeah.
if you can elaborate what would go under the skills.
Yeah, so you're saying like the additional skills section?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So for that, I would say that's where you want to highlight, for example, those that might have experience, like, programming experience or software experience, like definitely highlight technology experience in your skills section. So for example, if a job is asking if you have experience in Excel or with SQL or whatever, different programming or kind of, I would say like technology language, that you can highlight skills there. And that's where for sure you want to use that job description and look at those keywords. So in that skills section, and once again, you don't want to have, you're not listing like communication skills and problem solving skills. You're not listing all of those in there. You're really focusing on, when you look at that qualification section, the job description, or you're looking at, desired skills and abilities, making sure that if you have some of those, like especially the ones that are more specific, and once again, it may be more relevant for like the tech industry or certain, financial industry that have more like kind of specific nuanced, basically training and experience they're asking you to have, or knowledge, then I would highlight those kind of in that like section where you're showing your knowledge in those different areas. Yeah, great, Kai. Yeah, professional certifications, trainings too.
And language would fall.
Yes, and language. Yes, language
And
skills.
language would fall under
Absolutely.
that area.
Yep, language skills. Yeah. So if you speak more than one language, absolutely that should be in your skills section, because then they're going to be able to know that you can work with clients or diverse audiences from, all over the globe. Yeah, absolutely, language skills.
Since we have some students in undergrad and some
Yeah.
in graduate school, how would you put, I've seen so many different ways to put expected graduation date into the, and it's just like for all the things in resumes, that's the one that seems so like help.
Right, sure. Yeah, yep. Yeah, so for current students that are writing that graduation date, I would just say, so for example, if you're currently, like if you're a senior and you're going to graduate in June from UCLA this year, I would write, across from your UCLA, like you have your UCLA, Los Angeles, California, your degree, and then across from that degree line, I would write expected June 2021. So just expected month and date. Great. Yeah, good question. I was going to say, I can echo you, Fabian. I've seen all forms of what that looks like. Yes, Anna, absolutely. Yeah, Trisha.
So you're saying that when we do write our like skill set, we shouldn't put like problem solving skills or like communication skills. We shouldn't list skills. We should try to incorporate it in our experiences.
Yeah, so I would say do your best to incorporate those skills in your bullet statements on your resume in the experience section. However, if there are key ones that you really feel like absolutely, 100%, these are the top 3 things that I know I bring to the table, you can include, I would say, like, just make sure it's like only one or two that are more of those kind of like soft transferable skills, and focus on, you know, those other specific things. Once again, if it's language skills or other, you know, tech or, you know, business acumen that they're requiring or different trainings, focus on that. But, you know, only one or two of those ones that are more of like the, you know, great interpersonal skills like that, try to find a way to incorporate that in your resume section, in highlighting how you've gained that through different experiences you've had, or running, you know, trainings for different groups and things like that. So only one or two of kind of the soft skills, just making sure, because I mean, once again, I'm speaking just from what I've seen. I've seen people just kind of list out like all those things that might be from a job description of communication skills, event planning, and that's not what you want to utilize the skills section for. You want it to be more focused. So that would be my best advice there.
Yeah, I would even, this is Christina again.
Yeah.
I would say that it's a worthwhile challenge to think how you can demonstrate what experience you have that shows that you have that skill.
Yes.
Right? That's going to make
Yep.
a stronger statement about who you are. Look, I did this many years of whatever that demonstrate how well I'm organized, or I communicate well with other people. Just listing and saying, I'm good at XYZ.
Yeah.
How do I know you're really good at that?
Exactly. Yeah. That's how the bullet statements will help me show that, because I'm getting context and an example, like Christina just said, of how you have those skills, the preparation behind it. I also did want to just note, I see now it is 8:03. I know we have passed the time boundary here, and I know you all have full lives and things to do, or other commitments and responsibilities. So if you have to go, please feel free to head out, and know that we'll be following up with the slide deck and additional resources. I have a handout on a little bit more in depth on the RISEC model, in case you were interested in just examining that a little more with your results from the interest profiler. But once again, thank you all for coming. If you have to leave, please go. But also, if you have some time, you have more questions, I and a few others will stick around and happy to answer more questions, or, you know, talk if you had a question about upcoming program or upcoming session, we can answer those too. So thank you all so much. But yeah, we're welcome. We'll be here if those of you have any more questions.
I have a question.
Yeah. Taylor, is it?
I'm Taylor.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. Also, this was really helpful.
Oh, good. You're
Thanks to all
welcome.
you guys for hosting this. But
I'm so glad.
my question is, how do you feel about blending my coursework into my resume, or if I feel like I completed something as a result of a class,
Yeah.
incorporating that in? Or
Yeah.
I also have a section that's like relevant coursework, and I list classes
Okay.
that I took. Do you think it's already implied in my degree and I shouldn't bother with that? Or
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's actually, Taylor, your question is another super common one I get a lot from students and recent grads that I'm working with, because I've seen, once again, people have, you know, they might highlight 2 or 3 courses that are directly applicable to the job they're applying for. But I've also seen sometimes folks that have more limited work experience, you know, put relevant coursework, and they will list like 15 classes. And I'm like, you have your degree listed. I can get a sense of what you've studied from your degree. So I would say my advice on that is, number one, like you were saying with your coursework and projects, if you have done significant projects that you've gained experience and skills from, absolutely have a section that says, you know, relevant projects or projects and research experience or something like that. And you can highlight 1 to 2 projects that you've done in your coursework. And then the second part to your question, I think for you, underneath your degree, if there are specific classes you took that are absolutely valuable to the roles and the jobs you're looking into and applying for, you know, pick maybe 3 to 4 really key ones, especially if that type of, or if those topics are mentioned in the job description. You know, if it's, you know, foundational accounting or accounting principles or whatever it may be, if those things are listed in the job description, absolutely you could have, you know, relevant courses, and you could list, you know, 3 to 4 that are really key to what that role is looking for. So I would say you don't need to put the laundry list, because your degree is there and they can probably get a good sense of what you studied, but it does not hurt to highlight a few that are really connected to what the job is asking you to do.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Did Jared leave? I see a question from Jared in the chat that I could answer. So Jared had asked, say I only had one applicable experience for a job. Should I try to fit other experiences that show I have relevant skills, or should I focus on that one experience? That's a really good question, Jared. So I would say my recommendation for you would be definitely in that one key applicable experience for a job, you know, fluff it up as much as you can. And I use the word fluff, thoughtfully. I'm not saying fabricate information or exaggerate too much, but I also think you could have, a few more bullets than maybe normal to kind of pull things out a little more in detail than you might normally if your resume was more full. So think about breaking down maybe certain projects you did and break it into 2 bullets. That way you get to fill a little more space if you have limited experience. But absolutely, like you said, if you have other experiences that you've gained relevant skills, and once again, it's volunteer, paid, unpaid, all of the above is welcome. Absolutely include those experiences in your experience section. It does not have to be just any paid formal position where you were working with HR or something like that. Absolutely include those other experiences you have that have given you the skills for that role. So definitely, fluff up and make sure that one experience is as robust as possible with your bullet statements, but absolutely add the other things on your resume as well. Any other questions? Oh, the other thing I would say too, I forgot to say this in the cover letters for those of you that are still with us. Another common thing I see a lot, a common mistake, especially for those that might be submitting a lot of job applications out for the same type of roles at different companies. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen the wrong position title listed in that first introductory paragraph, or it might be, you might have marketing coordinator one role, and then it might be marketing campaign manager at the other role. And I have been on the receiving end of the wrong job title or the wrong company. And that's another one I'll point out. The wrong company is listed there. And so once again, that's why that proofreading and the double check and having someone else take a look at it is so important, because you move quick sometimes in your documents and you're copying and pasting from one to the other. I know, because I've totally been there. And I just make sure that you go back and double check that first paragraph to make sure it is the specific job title. And if there is like a requisition number as well, that always helps for especially the large companies that you're applying to on their formal websites. It might have, marketing coordinator, requisition number 269 or something like that. Put that in there as well. It helps that recruiter or screener to take a look and match it up with the number, but make sure title matches, and then make sure it's the right company, because that is an instant turn off. So I forgot to mention that in cover letters, but you want to make sure you don't miss the mark there.
It's interesting. That goes into kind of file management and resume management that you touched upon.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I ever did it, but because I caught myself before sending it, but I create now a folder for each job that I'm doing, and can make sure, because there's one point where I was like, oh, where was that paragraph, that experience, what version, where was it? And if I can just isolate it, it's best.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, it's helpful to have, if you can organize by either, like we even said, either the folders, or like I have a document, it's like resume notes, or like things that I've pulled off from editing different ones. And it's like, I can go back, I'm like, what did I do with that bullet? It's like back on the resume notes document. So having things like that to kind of help you organize all your content, so you don't mix up too much. But yeah, I just remember, like, the cover letter, make sure it's the right company, right job. Let's see, any other questions in here? And sorry that I was apparently in presenter view for a good portion of the presentation. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully you can see the slide deck later and it won't be in a smaller view, because sorry about that. All right. Well, if there's not any final questions, we will wrap up. I know it's 8:11, and once again, we'll be following up to share a brief feedback survey to ask you all to give your thoughts on how helpful this session was. Hopefully you got some new information and helpful tips. And that way we can, we really value your feedback, and we will take that into consideration for, comments that you provide for the remaining 3 sessions, as well as for doing this program in the future. We may be doing it again for the class of 2021 graduates. So we want to make sure that we're able to refine and make this best meet your needs. So please fill out the survey. We'll be once again sharing Google Drive folder with additional resources, documents, and articles that you can reference at any time, as well as the slide deck. And then we'll also send the RSVP links for the remaining sessions for in case anyone didn't get a chance yet to, if you didn't register for all 4 at one time, you can register for the remaining 3. And then we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, same time, same place in Zoomtopia on January 19th. So
Katie, do you mind if I just add in?
Yeah, please, Kai. Yeah.
If anyone in their mind is thinking, where's the LGBTQ? I just want you to know that, this is kind of the foundational workshop. And then as they go on, we're going to be infusing a lot more of that. I mean, first of all, just subtly, we want to create a safe space, and that's really important. But in terms of the content, more will be coming. And some of the resources that you're going to get that we don't have time to dive into today are really specific and are really helpful. And I just wanted to call out one that actually we're going to shout out different pages from this resource throughout the 4 weeks. It's a wonderful resource from the University of Toronto, and it's called Your Journey, a career guide for trans and non-binary students. But it's really great for anyone who's LGBTQ+. So there's just tons of really great stuff in there. So look out for that, but know that there's content coming, and your questions will all get answered. Because I know people do have questions about, LGBTQ+ specific stuff on resume and cover letter. So that will all get handled, and we thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Kaya. Yeah, I was thinking that too as we're going along. I know people have questions about, should I have this included on my resume, or should I wait? How do I, manage sharing that aspect of my identity? So we will address those for sure. Just kind of trying to get some foundational pieces, as well as introduce everyone and kind of build some safe, supportive community space here. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and take care. And we will see you next week.